Tonight on Boston 25. He was a boy from Beverly with big dreams of baseball. What Pete Frates left us, though, was an impact so big, so inspiring, it goes far beyond the diamond. An everlasting light that will never go out. Passion, dedication, strength, courage, and above all, love.
An enormous congregation, including Governor Baker, gathered together this morning to celebrate a life of sacrifice, charity, and love. Pete Frates was welcomed to St. Ignatius Church by members of the Boston College baseball community, men whose lives Pete touched, men who regarded Pete as a hero. Pete's family, together, his wife Julie and beautiful 5-year-old daughter Lucy, embraced by the love of thousands who made the trip to Chestnut Hill for a final goodbye. His fellow ALS warrior, Pat Quinn, wouldn't miss it for the world. He was embraced by John, Nancy, and Andrew. We open our tribute with the words of Father Tony Penna, who celebrated the Mass, delivered during a powerful homily this morning.
If we could live life with honor, and if we could, like St. Paul says, be aglow, be lit up by the Spirit of God, this church couldn't hold us. And the Spirit of God is still in this person. And it's coming out of this casket because this box cannot hold the Spirit of God. It's seeping into all of us as we sit here today. It's going into your blood, Governor, my blood. The goodness is seeping in all of us. Peter will be with us because that's the kind of power or juice he has accumulated because of his goodness over the years and because of his faith.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Boston 25. It's my honor to host this special tribute to fellow Eagle and international treasure Pete Frates. At his dad John's direction, there will be no more grieving. From here, we celebrate an incredible life. Butch Stearns and Mark Ockerbloom will join me in doing so shortly. Pete Frates lived a vibrant, full life, a graduate of St. John's Prep, captain of the baseball team at Boston College. His life took a turn on March 13, 2012, when he was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, a diagnosis that would change the world in many ways for him and millions around the world.
I didn't let anyone know what I pretty much knew what was gonna happen. The hardest part about it was seeing Mom and Dad's reaction. It's a lot of patience, will tell you. It's a lot harder on the family than sometimes it is on the patient.
Despite the diagnosis, Pete married the love of his life, Julie Kowalik, in 2013. They were tied at the hip in good times and in bad, in much more sickness than health. But their love is real and deep and inspiring. And from that love, in August of 2014, was born the beautiful Lucy, belle of the ball, who brought a vibrancy and energy to the Frates family at a time when it was so desperately needed. The support around the family was unending and included those who had known Pete and Julie for much of their lives. Well, it's great to have Mike Gambino with us, the head baseball coach at Boston College and personal friend of Pete Frates. And I want to start at the beginning of your relationship because Pete had recently been diagnosed and came to you and said, I'm not going to be able to keep working. And you had a great idea.
Yeah, so Pete had always been close to the program. I was here as an assistant coach actually when he was a player, and he and I had stayed close after that. And then when I took the job, he was always trying to do everything he could to help the program. He started a mentor night to help the guys kind of figure out what they're going to do after college. So he was always around us and looking to help. And then, yeah, we're sitting in the office, and he said, I'm not going to be able to keep working, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And the conversation kind of went like, I said, hey, why don't you come to Virginia Tech in 2 weeks? We're playing down there. John, I said, John, why don't you come with us? And then I said, actually, you want to travel the rest of the year? And he said, yeah, that'd be great. And I said, actually, you want a job? And he said, yeah, what's my title? I said, you can be our director of baseball operations. And he said, what are the duties? What does that entail? I said, I don't know. I never had one before, so we'll figure it out together.
Good guy to have in that role because no matter what he's doing, he's going to give you every piece of his soul in any job he undertakes. What was he able to do to help the program as your job evolved as head coach?
Honestly, the title was Director of Baseball Operations. What he was a mentor. and a role model. The conversations on the bench, in hotels, on the buses, on planes, while he was traveling with us, they always sort of centered around baseball, but they were about life. Everybody knows the sort of international impact that Pete had and the Ice Bucket had and the Frates family had, but I've had conversations with 22 to 29-year-old kids the last couple of weeks who were around when Pete was crying and just talking about, this was my hero. He changed my life. At Boston College, we talk about, and it becomes ingrained into you, what it means to be a man for others, or men and women for others. And Pete embodied that, and the boys looked up to him and they loved him.
I want to ask you a logistical question, just out of my own curiosity. As he physically deteriorates to the point where he can't speak, how did you communicate? How would you get across to Pete, and how would he get across to you?
Yeah, it was a constant adjustments. I mean, it started with the physical adjustments, where all of a sudden, we would, on the road, we would have buses with lifts in the back to lift his wheelchair up, and there was always kids on the team helping him, whether it was helping him eat or helping him get a jacket on. And then by the end, we would, when he couldn't travel, we were always on FaceTime with him. Most practices, after every game for sure. And then he was in constant communication when he had used the technology that he could type with his eyes. He was in constant communication with me and all of our guys. If there was ever anybody having a tough day, you could almost, on the field or off the field, Pete knew it, and he would get to them.
Mike, thanks. I know it's been a really tough week, so for you to come in here and spend some time with us, I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for talking about Pete and the mission.
Stay with us, much more ahead on our tribute to Pete Frates. Butch Stearns joins me next to talk about the incredible impact of the Ice Bucket Challenge. And of course, we'll get into the numbers, who has benefited and what's in store for the future fight against ALS. Plus, for love of the game, Pete's affair with baseball and the Red Sox, and the full embrace that organization showed him back time and time again. We're back right after this.
Yeah, he did it. It just had a great impact, and I think, took a really tough situation and turned it into a great positive for people and brought great awareness to, a tremendous cause. And, he's resting peacefully now, and, we wish his family the best.
The greatest of all time, weighing in with his thoughts. Butch Stearns joins me now, and as we look back at this collection of some of the Ice Bucket challenges, incredible to think it was 5 years ago. What do you remember about the summer of 2014?
Well, first of all, my perspective on Pete is this, Tom. In my lifetime, Pete is in a list of athletes who've brought world-renowned recognition to New England for all the right reasons. There was Marvin Hagler, there was Doug Flutie, and there was Michael Ruzioni. And Pete, through the Ice Bucket Challenge, what I remember is having those same feelings about the world now knows about us because of Pete Frates. So he never wanted pity. What he wanted to do was change lives. And now that he's gone, he changed so many lives and continues to do so.
The big goal was to raise awareness and get very influential people to talk about ALS. And I remember, and it's been said many times, that the biggest fish to catch was Bill Gates, and how satisfied the Frates family was when Bill Gates did his Ice Bucket Challenge. But just every day, you were wondering who was going to do one, and what am I going to do when I get the challenge, right?
Yeah, it was an amazing summer. It really was for 2014. And then it just carried on. People still do it today. There's organizations that do it today annually and do the Ice Bucket Challenge. An amazing moment also in 2015, Tom, opening day of spring training, because baseball is what ran through Pete's veins. Every Red Sox player, along with every other player on the Boston College side, all wearing Pete Frates jerseys, number 3 jerseys, all over the diamond. Look at that, as both teams continue to raise awareness in the fight against ALS. What a heartwarming sight.
And the energy carried over to Fenway Park, the home opener, when the Sox signed Pete to a ceremonial contract. Players streamed from the dugout to show him some love, and the family had a pretty cool moment with Pedro Martinez.
The Red Sox have always had a special relationship with Pete Frates and the Frates family, and Tom, they continue to do so.
The Red Sox issued a statement about the passing of their honorary player, saying, "Never in the history of baseball have we seen a person's efforts outside of the game gain him a professional baseball contract and a home in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. His efforts will not only be felt in the labs of ALS researchers across the country, but also within the walls of Fenway Park, where his spirit will remain with us always."
And of course, even bigger than that, Pete might have left baseball baseball, but baseball never left him. His dream was to one day be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And if you remember, he was. His glove, hat from his playing days at Boston College, as well as the bucket and sunglasses used on August 14, 2014, during his own Ice Bucket Challenge in left field at Fenway Park. They're enshrined in Cooperstown. Pete lived more than 7 years with ALS. Two other baseball players also died of ALS. Yankee legend Lou Gehrig, of course, who retired in 1939 following his diagnosis. He died 2 years later at the age of 37. And another Yankee Hall of Famer, pitcher Catfish Hunter. His career also cut short. He died in 1999, about a year after being diagnosed. Being inducted into Cooperstown, cool.
Cooperstown is a place that I listened to a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old tell me that I had to get in a car and drive 5 hours from Beverly, Massachusetts, because he wanted to go to the Hall of Fame. Well, Pete, you're going to the Hall of Fame, and you're going to the Hall of Fame in one of the most unbelievable ways possible.
As we continue Pete's connection with the Sox in September of 17, the book about Pete and Julie's life, The Ice Bucket Challenge, was unveiled at a release party at Fenway Park. Casey Sherman and Dave Wedge were the authors. It was as much a love story as it was a tale about perseverance and commitment. Earlier this week, Mark Ockerbloom sat down for a conversation with Dave Wedge.
Dave, you authored that book with Casey Sherman. You had unlimited access to Pete, and I think people really want to know what it was like to sit down with Pete and tell his story.
Well, you know, when we first started doing this book, it was around 2016, and Pete, his ability to communicate was still intact at that point. That diminished over time, obviously, but we're very fortunate that in that book we were able to get some thoughts from Pete directly, and there's some actual quotes from Pete in the book where he would communicate with us through Facebook Messenger and you know, tell us little vignettes of things that were important to him in his life. So to us it was very important to be able to include his voice in the book.
I think you have a funny story that goes along with that. He had his sense of humor about him.
Well, that's the one thing that Pete never lost. You know, there was many examples of that throughout his, you know, the last 5 or 6 years. But in this case, we were talking to the family one day, and we get a message. You know, you have a message from Pete Frates on Facebook. Casey and I both look at our phones, we're like, and we look at it, and we open it up, and it says BS, except the real word. And he says, don't listen to them, I'll tell you the real story. And then he told us a couple stories about some, you know, baseball things that happened, the bean pot at Fenway Park. And so, you know, there was other examples too. There was, you know, the false report of him dying back, I think it was last year. And he put out a tweet in response to that, and he played the Pearl Jam song Alive. And he's like raising his eyebrows and looking at the camera. So, you know, the guy never lost his sense of humor, and he was really good at just you know, harnessing the power of social media and you know, making people connect with him.
You know, Tom, I want to compliment the Frates family, John and Nancy and everybody, Andrew and Pete, for telling their story, because I'm not judging anybody else, but so many people are private when something like this happens, and they threw themselves out there from day one and continue to do so.
It's their welcoming nature. We have much more to come on our tribute to Pete Frates. Up next, the impact his work has had on the world of medicine. Amazing numbers and statistics from ALS Therapy Development Institute. We are remembering a hero and extending our warmest thoughts to the Frates family on this incredibly difficult day. Welcome back to our special Remembering Pete Frates. His impact was regularly recognized as his fight with ALS continued, Pete making regular appearances. The field at St. John's Prep is called the Pete Frates Diamond, and there's a dorm at Edicott College named after Pete. Edicott, of course, located in Pete's hometown of Beverly. That's a building loaded with quads, and I wonder if any of those students are watching us on a Friday night. Probably not. In 2016, Pete and his family returned to the old Shea Field at Boston College, where his number 3 was taken out of circulation forever, never to be worn again by a BC baseball player. And the BC baseball team continues to honor the fight. This year will be the 9th Strikeout ALS Game. We now take a look back at the 7th game. It was played at Fenway Park in April of 2018.
An absolutely gorgeous spring day at Fenway Park, finally, for an event that certainly deserves it.
What a better day. I mean, look at it. It's like God is smiling down in the ALS community. Let's bring them in. Let's keep the awareness going.
Special day today. You know, I talked to little Lucy this morning, that's Pete's daughter, and I said, you know, we're going to the park. And she said, Daddy's Park? And I thought about it for a second. I said, yeah, you're right. It is Daddy's Park.
The Strikeout ALS Game has become a staple of the spring, seemingly a bit bigger every year.
Yeah, it's hard to put into words how special of a day this is. I mean, you look at when Pete got sick, 6 years ago and sat down and gave us the directive, right? Raise funds and raise awareness. And when you have a day that's as special as this that does both, then I guess, pardon the pun, but it becomes a home run.
Today, BC welcomed Florida State to Boston. The Eagles also welcomed back broadcasting alums John Shambi and Molly McGrath. This is a family affair, after all. Plus, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, who threw out the first pitch.
He is such a wonderful person. You know, I mean, he gets it. Charlie Baker gets it on so many levels. He met our family, he met Pete, and like most people, he fell in love with Pete Frates. And he really understands this disease and the impact that it has not only on a family, but on a village, on a city.
All right, so now to the brass tacks. Where's the money going? We can speak specifically for the ALS Therapy Development Institute. It's located in Cambridge, leading the fight against this dreaded disease. The Ice Bucket Challenge led to $4 million flowing into the system there. So the question becomes, what is done with that money? Half of it went toward the Precision Medicine Program. Researchers at ALS TDI partner with patients battling ALS to gather data, everything from family history to genetic makeup and biomarkers. The other $2 million helped advance an antibody toward a clinical trial for ALS. We are closer to a cure. Of that, I am certain, much closer than we were in 2012 when Pete was diagnosed. For all of this impact, the honors continue to pour in. What a memory this was. In fact, 3 years ago today, December 13th, 2016, Pete honored by the NCAA with its Inspiration Award. And since he couldn't go to the ceremony came to him. Look at the crowd that was packed into the Frates house in Beverly. This was an incredible night.
The NCAA gives an Inspiration Award every year to someone in athletics, typically a former student athlete who has done something that inspires people to go above and beyond themselves, and this room says everything that needs to be said, I think, Pete.
Let's stay in Beverly. Just 2 years later, the dedication of Pete's Park, an all-inclusive park just minutes from the Frates house, refurbished and renamed in honor of the man who probably should be mayor of Beverly.
I can't think of a better way to honor the courage and the heroism in many respects that the Frates family and Pete have shown over the course of their years of dealing with this terrible illness than to come up with a beautifully simple name in an all-inclusive park for kids that's called Pete's Park. It's absolutely perfect.
And just 4 months ago, on BC's Brighton campus, the announcement that Phase 2 of the Harrington Athletics Village, the training center for the BC baseball and softball teams, would be named the Pete Frates Center. It opens in August of 2020. Nancy said BC was always a part of the Frates family, and now the Frates family will always be a part of BC. We'll take one final break, but we've got a heck of a grand finale, so stick around. The incredibly powerful address Nancy delivered at the Great Hall at historic Faneuil Hall, part of TEDx Boston 2014. We remember, we celebrate, we honor the legendary life of Pete Frates. Please stay with us. There are many people living with ALS right now, and you can help with Pete and his family's mission to assist progressed ALS patients and their families with the overwhelming cost of home health care. To make a donation to the nonprofit Pete Frates Family Foundation, send it to the address right there on your screen, 21 Landers Drive in Beverly, or online. We have posted a link to the site on the Boston25.com. From all of us here at Boston 25, we thank you for joining us for this incredibly special look at the life and impact of Pete Frates. Our parting shot comes from Mom, Nancy Frates, a portion of a very powerful speech she delivered at the Great Hall in Faneuil Hall, part of the TEDx Boston event in 2014. As we say goodnight, I want you to remember Pete's most famous words: don't ever be afraid to be great.
The person at the middle of the challenge has to be willing to have the mental toughness to put themselves out there. Pete still goes to baseball games, and he still sits with his teammates in the dugout. And he hangs his gravity feed bag right on the cages. You'll see the kids, they're up there hanging it up. Pete, is that okay? Yep. And then they put it right into his stomach. Because he wants them to see what the reality of this is and how he's never, ever gonna give up. And the third thing I wanna leave you with, if you ever come across a situation that you see as so unacceptable, I want you to dig down as deep as you can and find your best mother bear and go after it.